Hi everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. I know we have people attending from all over the world. My name is Vanessa Pulgarin. I'm RegionsAdapt project manager. This is a very kind welcome to all of you and a big thank you on behalf of Energy First D and RegionsAdapt. Well, I think first of all, I would like you to test your microphone and audio settings in order to begin with the webinar. Our webinar is, well, the launch of our RegionsAdapt report 2017. So if you have any questions or technical problems, you can always reach us. We have my colleague that can help you, or you have also the phone numbers that you can call if you have technical problems. So let's check everyone if it's all okay. Okay, great. I don't think we'll have questions. Okay, Carl is asking me that he cannot speak, but I will allow you to speak, Carl. No worries there.
Great. Thank you, Vanessa.
Okay, great. So now let's proceed. Right now, what I'm going to do is like a small introduction about what RegionsAdapt initiative is. As many of you know, this is an initiative that was launched alongside the COP21 in Paris. It was a very important COP for subnational governments, and there were 27 founding members who signed this global initiative for regional governments to take concrete actions, cooperate, and report efforts on climate adaptation. It is an initiative that has 3 commitments on it to begin with. The commitments are, the first one is to adopt a strategic approach to adaptation and prioritize adaptation actions within 2 years of joining the initiative. The second commitment is to take concrete action on adaptation in at least one of the key priority areas identified by the regions. Right now, there are 7 of these key priority areas that many regions are participating, and also technical partners, which we really appreciate, and we thank you for all the support. And the third commitment is reporting data on the progress of the adaptation actions on an annual basis through the risk and adaptation sections of CDP's States and Regions platform. And on this particular commitment, we really want to thank CDP for all the support that we've been having through the year, and that we'll be still having for 2018. So thank you very much. We have Carl here as a representative of this platform from CDP, but we'll go with him a little bit later. Right now, I would like to give the word to our coordinator, the Secretary General of Energy First D. As you know, the Secretariat of RegionsAdapt is on Energy First D. So right now we're going to proceed with Natalia Vera.
Hello, hello all. Thank you, Vanessa. Well, the Energy First D has been strongly committed since 2002 in raising the voice of subnational governments and sustainable development global discussions, as well as in promoting cooperation and exchanges among subnational governments in those matters. So in the light of the track record of 15 years And in the context of the COP21, the Energy for SD felt strong and mature enough to respond to that global challenge and launched at this moment an unprecedented global initiative for subnational governments to work together in climate adaptation, that is the RegionsAdapt. Our vision at that time was to first raise the stature of subnational governments in tackling climate change issues. Second, ensure that climate governance, and especially the Paris Agreement, includes non-state actors and in particular subnational governments. And third, to promote cooperation and mutual learning among subnational governments across the world. The report we released today responds to those challenges and shows the road successfully covered to date. In this sense, I would like to make, as Vanessa did, a special recognition to RegionsAdapt members who are the real architects of RegionsAdapt progress, as well as to the invaluable support of technical partners such as CAPNet, MCII, Climatecos, the G Foundation, and our fellow partner, the CDP. Special mentions should be also made to Joan Franza, our RegionsAdapt project manager in the first phase. But as much as we are pleased with the results of RegionsAdapt today, we know there's still much to do. And we strongly believe the way forward alongside the Paris Agreement can only be covered when including the role and contributions of subnational governments. First, because they are responsible with their competences and are fully committed in the well-being of their citizens and environments. Second, because with their rather few resources when compared to other levels of governments, they have showed to be innovative, efficient, and bold in their actions, becoming a real source of inspiration to others. And last, because subnational governments, in the frame of networks such as Energy for SD, constantly show their solidarity and will to cooperate with other subnational governments and stakeholders towards integrated solutions and approaches. Our vision as Energy for SD is to build together more integrated, sustainable, and resilient territories. And we want to do that through RegionsAdapt with you. So thanks for your contributions in the last years, and looking very much forward to continuing our efforts together in the next years. Thanks also to the participants attending today. We hope you really enjoyed the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nat. Well, that was a very broad explanation of Energy for SD. And right now I'm going to proceed to go through the agenda. Oh, there you go. I'm sorry. Well, here is the agenda. We're going to begin with Carl, who's the representative of CDP. He's going to talk about the benefits of disclosure using data to power regional climate adaptation. Then we're going to go through the key findings of the report. In here, we're going to have the annual disclosure data by Sarab Gupta, my colleague of Energy for SD. She's a policy officer. Then we're going to go briefly through the 2 years of RegionsAdapt by Joan Franza. He's the former RegionsAdapt project manager, who I really want to thank for all the guidance and the transition that he has helped me through. And then I'm going to speak a little bit about RegionsAdapt's future, a renewed engagement, the new commitments, the future of this important initiative. And then we're going to go with the APC tool that Elisa Sainz de Murieta is going to explain. This is the Adaptation Policies Checklist tool that the Basque Center for Climate Change is taking the lead on. And then we're going to have a section of questions and answers that we're going to be happy to answer. So, Carl, you have right now the word.
Great. Thank you, Vanessa. Do you mind clicking through the slides and I'll just tell you when?
Sure.
Okay, so before I begin, I just want to welcome everyone here again to this webinar. Today marks a special occasion as the launch of the RegionsAdapt report confirms that subnational governments across the globe acknowledge the opportunity and necessity of climate adaptation. They demonstrate how they are driving standards of climate leadership by putting transparency and accountability at the heart of their climate strategies. As you guys have heard, my name is Carl. I work on the CDP States and Regions program, and I'm very pleased today to share with you insights as to what the value of disclosure is and how we use the data to power more insight and meaningful climate adaptation at the regional level. So first, let me begin by giving you an outline of my talk. I will start by giving you a quick overview of CDP and the States and Regions program, outlining how we work with subnational governments. I will then discuss the importance of disclosure, outlining the key benefits of this process. I will then introduce the data analytics that is exclusive for regional governments, and lastly, provide a bit of insights on adaptation to explain the important role of regional governments to climate adaptation. Next slide, please. So for those who are not aware, CDP is an international nonprofit that works with companies, cities, states, and regions to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, safeguard water resources, and protect forest landscapes. CDP provides a global platform for those actors to measure, manage, and disclose their environmental impacts. In 2017, our global network expands to over 100 states and regions, over 500 cities, and over 6,000 companies disclosing their environmental information. Our vision is to have a thriving economy that works for people and planet in the long term. To achieve this, it became our mission to transform how companies, cities, states, and regions think about environmental issues like climate change by bringing disclosure into the mainstream environmental policy and decision-making process. Next slide, please. So CDP's States and Regions program, as the name suggests, our main target actors are the governments at the first level of administrative division. We refer to states and regions as a catch-all phrase for the multitude of names that exist for those governments, which include states, regional, provinces, and counties. These governments play an increasingly important role in responding to climate change. They set ambitious targets and drive global standards of climate leadership. A rapidly growing number of governments across the globe are going beyond requirements of the respective national governments to mitigate and adapt to the effects of climate change. And the progress made by these governments and maintaining this momentum is essential in limiting the global temperature rise to 2 degrees Celsius. And that's where we come in. The main aim of the States and Regions program is to use disclosure to promote transparency, increase climate action, ambition, and accountability of these governments. The program launched officially in 2015, and since then we've seen an over 50% increase in the number of states and regions disclosing their climate data to us. This shows how states and regions across the globe are demonstrating their willingness to create a collective knowledge base for climate action. Last year, I'm pleased to announce that over 100 states and regions disclosed their climate data to CDP, which represents 36 countries, over 630 million people, 13 trillion in dollars in GDP, and around 3.8 gigatons of carbon dioxide equivalent in emissions. Next slide, please. To discuss the importance of disclosure, let me begin by telling you what it is about. In simple terms, it is the act of making something known. Here at CDP, we have a popular saying, what gets measured gets managed. This means that achieving our climate goals and driving sustainable economies start from being aware of your environmental impacts so that decision makers like yourselves can make informed decisions. Our disclosure work can be summarized in this diagram, as you can see in this slide. First, we invite states and regions to answer our questionnaire. They go through our questions, collect data, and then submit the response. We then provide feedback through insights and analysis on the data that's close to us, with the aim of helping governments to refine and develop plans and policies to manage the impacts of climate change. The process of reporting provides a variety of benefits for regional governments when it comes to climate adaptation. Firstly, the process of data collection to formulate responses to our questionnaire allows the identification of key trends, risks, and cost-saving opportunities. This allows governments to identify potential gaps and areas for improvement so that they can identify new ways to kind of innovate and adapt to climate change. Overall, there is this informational sharing and learning aspect that comes from the reporting process, which enables continuous growth and improvement to better address climate change impacts. When a government participates to our reporting process, you also join a global network dedicated to climate action, which brings in opportunities for collective action on climate management. Disclosing your environmental data annually to CDP demonstrates your willingness to lead to a more transparent and collective approach to climate action and enhance resilience for your citizens. The reporting to CDP is also free of charge and requires no minimum requirements to report. We understand that regional governments are at different stages of maturity when it comes to climate change, and therefore we want to offer flexibility in the information that they can disclose. And finally, we also provide tools that could support your planning and strategies on adaptation through the access of disclosed data, as I will discuss in the following slides. Next slide, please. Last year, we developed an online data analytics tool dedicated to the work of subnational governments. Our data analytics is called the SubNational Climate Analytics, or SCAN for short. This tool is exclusively available for states and regions that disclosed to CDP last year, and the aim of this is to provide them with all of the publicly reported data from 2017, allowing them to gain insight into the full data set as well as the climate actions of their peers. This tool includes data on the following sections, such as climate mitigation, adaptation, economic opportunities, as well as insights from CDP's cities program. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. Each section includes data charts to present the data that disclosed to us. In this slide, as you can see, you can find information on vulnerability assessments and an adaptation action. By using SCAN, governments can identify other states and regions that face the same climate change, water and social risks, as well as adaptation actions that they take to reduce their impacts. Overall, SCAN acts as a resource for all governments to see publicly available adaptation plans. Next slide, please. So I would like to conclude my talk with a few insights on adaptation since the States and Regions program started. As shown in the first graph here, we can see an over 70% increase in the number of subnational governments reporting that they anticipate impacts of climate change to present physical risks to the region. This puts emphasis on the increasing awareness of regional governments with regards to how climate change is influencing their jurisdictions across the globe. It is important to note that how serious and frequent the impacts of climate change will be felt across the world depends not only on how we mitigate the impacts of climate change, but also on how we adapt and implement adaptation measures. Successful adaptation policies are critical to this, and as you can see on the second graph, regional governments are already implementing plans with an increase in 40% in the number of states and regions reporting that they have adaptation plans in place. But this is just the beginning. While many regional governments have already developed long-term adaptation plans and strategies, more needs to be done. And to achieve a thriving economy that works for people in the planet in the long term, we invite more regional governments to disclose to us and join RegionsAdapt to drive further climate action to ensure a healthy, sustainable, and resilient economy for their citizens. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carl. Well, this was the representation of CDP, which we thank very much. And right now we're going to proceed with the key findings of the report. This is going to take 3 sections. The first section is going to be explained by my colleague, Sara Kupka. So, Sara, you might begin now.
Thank you, Vanessa, and hello to everyone. As Vanessa already pointed out, my name is Sara Kupka. I'm Policy Officer with Energy for SD for climate change. And in this role, I'm highly working with the RegionsAdapt initiative and was also very much involved in the compilation of the report. So to give you a general overview of our 2017 report, we had 35 regional governments disclosing their information, which constitutes a 30% increase in relation to the year before. We have most of the RegionsAdapt members that reported to the platform were from the Americas, whereas we had 14 from Latin America. But we had also members from Africa, Europe, Asia, and Oceania reporting to the platform. The data reveals that there are very different climate impacts that regional governments are facing. And they are also facing the associated risks coming with this. So the report encompasses physical risk, water supply risk, and socioeconomic risk resulting from climate change impacts. But we also included in the report the adaptation actions and the commitments that regional governments are taking to addressing these risks. Vanessa, maybe you can click to the next one already. Thank you. So 2/3 of the governments that are RegionsAdapt members and reported to the CDP States and Regions platform have already undertaken a climate change risk or vulnerability assessment. This determines how they are or will be affected by climate change, and it is a first step to identify the needs. And compared to our last report from the data we collected in 2016, this share increased significantly. Given the manifold and highly threatening impacts of climate change, adaptation actions and the strategic approach are clearly needed. And as the data shows, regional governments identified this need already and already are carrying out adaptation plans or are in the process of developing one. So compared to our last report, the overall share of regional governments did not change, but we observed that regions developed new adaptation plans or worked on their already existing ones, which was observable with the ongoing publication of adaptation plans in 2016 and 17. We had around 270 different adaptation actions that were reported last year. These actions either address physical risks or risks to water supply resulting from climate change impacts. And it shows that regional governments are not only like experiencing the impacts and the risks, but they are also very committed to protect their territories and the populations from the impacts of climate change. Next slide, please. So we saw that all of the 35 RegionsAdapt members that disclosed last year face significant physical risks due to the impacts of climate change, with more than 200 different physical risks reported to the platform. The results are more or less consistent with the results from 2016. So the main concern and the main risk source came from the impact of climate change from more frequent or intense droughts, but also the change in seasonality of rainfall, more frequent and or intense rainfall or more hot days constitute high level of risk to the governments that reported, among, of course, the other impacts that you can see here on the graphs. Next slide, please. But as I already said, regional governments are not only experiencing the risk, they are already taking actions. And we saw that around 68% of physical risk reported are already addressed by an adaptation action. So we saw that the number of adaptation action addressing a certain climate change impact correlates with the type of risk that was most commonly reported by the disclosing governments. But for other impacts, we also saw that a higher number of adaptation actions addressing them could be associated with the dramatic risks they involve. So among the most commonly reported categories of adaptation actions in 2017 were projects and policies that are targeted at those most vulnerable, additional reservoirs and wells for water storage, the diversification of water supply, or real-time risk monitoring, among the others that you can see also here in this graph. But we also had a huge number of adaptation actions that fall not into one of these categories, which shows that there's really no one-size-fits-all solution in climate change adaptation, and that it's really a specific and location-specific threat to regional governments and to territories worldwide. Next slide, please. Regarding the risk to water supply, we saw that similar to the 2016 findings, the data for 2017 showed that most disclosing governments consider their territories to be exposed to substantive risk of to water supply. So we had 27 out of 32 who answered this section are experiencing these risks, and the rank of these risks remained the same compared to our first report in 2016. So increased water stress or scarcity is the #1 risk faced by the disclosing governments, followed by declining water quality, flooding, and the infrastructure problem. Next slide, please. But also here, we could not only see the risk that the governments are facing, but also that the adaptation actions that they are already carrying out. And we found 72 examples of different adaptation action addressing the risks to water supply. The most common adaptation actions were the investment in existing water supply infrastructure, the diversifying water supply, or the conservation awareness and education. Next slide, please. The last risk section in the platform encompasses the social risk and the socioeconomic risk resulting from climate change. And we had 31 regional governments confirming that they are facing or will face social risks due to climate change and its impact. And here we saw that especially vulnerable population face an increased risk, but there will also be an increased demand for public services, including healthcare services, and an increased incidence and prevalence of diseases, as well as fluctuating socioeconomic conditions. In contrast to the other sections, this section only encompasses the risk related to climate change, and we did not collect information related to adaptation actions that are being implemented to mitigate those risks. And this is because the socioeconomic risks require really multiple responses to be effectively addressed, and are also highly connected to development policies. So as a summary, the data we collected reveals that the risk resulted from climate change are numerous, and territories worldwide are experiencing these risks and impacts. But at the same time, the report also confirmed the commitment of regional government to mitigate these effects of climate change and protect their populations. And yeah, the RegionsAdapt initiative supports regional governments in their efforts. And yeah, I think my former colleague Joan will now describe what the RegionsAdapt has achieved then in the last 2 years in this regard. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, all colleagues from Energy for SD, for this kind invitation, for your kind words. And it's a pleasure to be with all of you, all the audience from all over the world. The next slide, please, while we still speak. So if you had a chance to look at the report, which by the way is available to download directly in the handout section of the webinar's dashboard, you will see that this report is mainly constituted of two main parts. The first one is the key figures that Sarah just mentioned, and the second section is kind of an assessment of these two first years of RegionsAdapt, 2016 and 2017. For those who are not familiar with RegionsAdapt, this was the time frame that the founding members set to themselves to fulfill the three initial commitments that represents RegionsAdapt. So, as we said, these 27 founding members come from all continents and all stages of development. And as Vanessa already mentioned, basically they committed to three commitments, which we will talk about them in a few seconds. So just to, before we get more into detail, to disclose the level of accomplishment of these three commitments, just some key figures of RegionsAdapt in these two first years. So we start with these 27 members. Today there are 69 members in RegionsAdapt, among which 64 are regional governments. By regional governments, we meant all these jurisdictions between the local and national levels, and 4 associations of these jurisdictions, comprising a total population of almost 300 million inhabitants. And nowadays, we also have 8 technical partners that collaborate, support the work of our working groups. And in these 2 years, we were able to activate 6 working groups that relate to the 7 key priority areas that also are part of the initiative. Inside these 6 working groups, we could organize 25 formal online meetings where governments could exchange best practices, exchange their cases of success, but also their failures, in order to have this shared learning process. We also, whenever possible, we try to adopt common partners of good practices, or even create them if this is the case, and also run pilot projects whenever possible, but trying to matchmake the offer of international technical cooperation and the demand on these topics. In parallel to these online meetings, we also organize what we call webinars, which are always focused on cross-cutting thematics that includes the discussions of at least 2 of these 6 working groups, but also other topics that are cross-cutting by nature, and that complements the work, the focused work of these working groups, and ensure also a coherence throughout these 7 areas. In addition to all these activities that the Secretariat carried out in these 2 years, we also took part in some coalitions and even some other initiatives that are inside Energy for SD. For example, Energy for SD runs a similar initiative for biodiversity, the Regions for Biodiversity Learning Platform, which, of course, for obvious reasons, we found some clear synergies with our working group on protected areas, biodiversity, and forestry. Also, we could benefit from our interaction with Orufogar, identifying new members, holding side events together in major conferences. RegionsAdapt was also invited to take part in the Marrakesh partnership of the Global Climate Action, the UNEP-DTU Partnership Database, and the UN Sustainable Development Knowledge Platform, among other initiatives. Next slide, please. So, as you may see in the second section that I mentioned of the report, these are the main figures referred to these assessment of the level of fulfillment of these 3 commitments by our founding members. So just to recall, commitment number 1 is to adopt a strategic approach to adaptation and prioritize adaptation actions, such as through adopting or reviewing a regional plan or a strategy on climate change adaptation within 2 years of joining the initiative. So for this commitment, in our opinion, the most challenging by far, we had 81% of our founding members fulfilling it, which I believe it's quite successful. On the second commitment, which is to take concrete action on adaptation in at least one of the key priority areas identified by the regions. These areas could include water resources and management, resilience and disaster risk reduction, agriculture and zootechnics, forestry, protected areas and biodiversity, infrastructure and territorial planning, economic impacts and opportunities, and social impacts and adaptations. These are the 7 areas of commitment number 2, and also the 7 areas that I was talking about when I was describing our working groups. So for commitment number 2, we had 100% of our founding members fulfilling it. On commitment number 3, there are two forms to interpret it. First, as you can see in the graph on the left, is the number of governments reporting to CDP at least once, so at least in 2016 or 2017. From this analysis, we reach 85% of fulfillment, and if we want to assess governments who disclose in these 2 years, then we are about 2/3, 63% of fulfillment. So I think these numbers, they talk through themselves and show that our founding members are our regional government's commitment to climate adaptation. They had this bold vanguardism, I think we can say, in COP21, launching the first global initiative for these level of jurisdiction on climate adaptation. And they, in the meanwhile, after launching it, for most of the cases, they also have done their homework and showing their leadership by the example. So I will remain here with you, and if you have any question about more information is also available in the report. You can see in the details of these founding members and relating to their commitments. But I think we have still many things to talk about today, so I will give the floor to my colleagues once again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Joan. Thank you very much, Sarah, also. As Joan has mentioned, this report and the presentation is also available at the handout section here. And also this presentation is being recorded if you want to come back to it later. And well, now I'm going to proceed. We've spoken about the findings and the 2 years of RegionsAdapt, and right now it's time to talk about the future of RegionsAdapt. This is a renewed engagement that it has been commonly agreed. It's been through a participatory process where many governments have been involved. Founding members have agreed to remain engaged with RegionsAdapt and keen on working together. On December 3rd, 2017, RegionsAdapt celebrated its 2nd anniversary, and this landmark represents the conclusion of the 2-year deadline that founding members had to accomplish the first 3 commitments. And right now, for 2018 and for 2019, we have new commitments, and this is a new invitation to embark on a renewed pathway through new rounds of these 2-year commitments. RegionsAdapt Secretariat has partnered with the Basque Center for Climate Change to offer a new phase of commitments to members based on a solid and innovative scientific background. The Basque Center for Climate Change will have the floor and the opportunity to speak after me. And right now, I would like to highlight the commitments for 2018 and 2019. The main commitments are to identify opportunities for improving the regional government's adaptation plan or strategy by answering the questionnaire of BC3's adaptation policies checklist, the APC tool, or any other relevant tool, and inform the Secretariat about identified gaps. So this is a voluntary choice that they will have to make regarding the tool that they would like to use. But BC3 kindly has suggested and has worked on this APC tool. And commitment number 5 is to take concrete action on adaptation in at least 3 of the 7 key priority areas identified by the regions. We have currently 69 members of RegionsAdapt, and many of them are very engaged, so I don't think this will be a problem. The purpose is to work more on different key priority areas in order for them to have a very specific idea on their actions. And then for 2020, 2021, we have commitment 6 and commitment 7, which is to publish a report providing evidence of measures filling the gaps identified through APC or any other relevant tool. So it is not only about to know what is going on, but actually to publish a report and telling the world how they are taking actions on adaptation. And the commitment 7 is to take concrete action on adaptation in at least 6 of 7 key priority areas. So they will be even more engaged with RegionsAdapt and with providing their efforts and sharing their knowledge with other regions that might need the example, or they can cooperate with them. And as a long-term commitment, we have to gradually broadening the scope of the data annually reported on the progress of the adaptation actions through CDP's states and regions reporting platform, or any other relevant reporting platform as consensually agreed by members. This means that we've seen and we believe that regions are taking actions more and more on a more broader basis. So they will have more to report. They will have more actions taken in their territories that they would like to report on this platform. And in addition to its annual reporting process through CDP's States and Regions platform, RegionsAdapt Secretariat expects to conduct 2 assessment review in each one of the semester of 2018, asking again members to provide evidence of the fulfillments of the commitments 1 and 2. And speaking about the efforts that RegionsAdapt is going to be working on the upcoming years, we are going to still keep boosting on working groups. We are addressing still cross-cutting topics. We welcome new technical partners. We are welcoming also suggestions. We are doing a very big effort and putting big efforts with different technical partners and with regions on funding priorities, because we know that regional governments come with very tight budgets, and we are doing a big effort on this with the support of Energy First D Secretary as well, and other projects and initiatives. So right now I would like to welcome Elisa Sainz de Murieta. She comes from the BC3, the Basque Center for Climate Change. She is going to explain about the APC tool, which is the Adaptation Policies Checklist tool. Elisa, welcome.
Hello, everyone. Well, first of all, thank you so much for counting on us and on BC3 to work with you in this interesting new initiative of on the second phase of RegionsAdapt. I want to start by saying do you mind, Vanessa, going to the next slide, or Thais? Yes, I would like to start by saying that this tool has been developed together with 2 researchers at the University of McGill in Canada. It has been led by 2 other researchers, colleagues of mine at BC3. The lead author has been Marta Olazabal, who's not here today with us as she is on maternity leave, and Yvonne Galarraga, whom you many of you at least might know from previous experiences in Energy for SD. And he is also listening to us, so he says hi, and I wanted also to acknowledge this work. Okay, so what is the APC tool? It is a checklist, easy to fill in checklist that can be used as an ex-post evaluation tool, and is meant to assess the level of progress of climate change adaptation policies in general, and also plans. So, so far, the existence of climate change adaptation policies has been used as an indicator of progress towards adaptation. And that's fine, as adaptation is a very emergent issue, as you all well know. But we wanted to go further and try to evaluate whether adaptation efforts so far are actually on the way to be successful, on the way to reduce vulnerability, risks, and exposure. So the work we did was review all the relevant literature looking at adaptation tracking and identify those issues related to policy, economic, scientific, and legitimacy that have been acknowledged to be very, very relevant to achieve successful adaptation. So basically, the APC tool is an Excel file which includes a checklist with 17 indicators and 53 metrics that cover these general aspects of adaptation policies. Can we go next, please? Thank you. So 3 main areas are to be evaluated with this tool. First, policy and economic areas that deal with resources, deal with reliability and building confidence, and also with institutional support. The second area is scientific, deals with scientific and technical issues. And here we will look at existing knowledge on impacts, on adaptation, on risks, on uncertainty. Also, very important and still emergent as well, all the monitoring, evaluation, and reporting processes. I think RegionsAdapt provides a very good platform precisely to do this. Also dealing with adaptive management and how to be flexible in time as we learn from previous processes and uncertainties are reduced. And finally, legitimacy, which has been acknowledged to be very important in order to build trust, transparency, also to engage with stakeholders and society, and to take into account equity and justice issues. So in summary, if we go to the next slide, please. These are the main components of the APC tool. As I said, policy and economic areas, legitimacy, and scientific and technical issues, dealing with resources, reliability, and institutional and public and private support in relation to policy. And within the scientific and technical area, we will look at usable knowledge, monitoring, evaluation and reporting, and adaptive management. Next, please. So, as I said, there are 17 indicators within the 3 major areas that I have just explained. Each area has a number of components or parts that are measured through some indicators, but each indicator can also be divided into metrics. So if we have a look at the next slide. Next slide, please. All right. This is how the Excel file that many of you have, may already have. This is the way the Excel file looks. We have for each component a group of indicators and metrics which have been defined as questions to be answered. Which kind of answer? Well, for trying to be homogeneous, we just defined yes or no answers. For each of the metric, the 53 metrics. Some of the metrics have been divided into smaller questions. And this is the example that you see here with metric 11, which deals with climate change mitigation policies. And within this metric, we assess smaller questions. But they all are yes or no questions, quite easy to be fulfilled, we believe. Okay, if we can also see that when possible and if possible, it would be ideal to be able to provide a reference or a source that can help us in case verify or go to the source of the response, and additional comments that could deal with small explanations about each response. Next, please. Well, this is just what I explained. Explain just an example. Yeah. All right. We also have another tab in which you can provide additional information in case you want to send it. Which kind of information? Well, first of all, if climate change adaptation has a specific website at the government site, that would be good to be able to track that website, and different documents that support what we have been answering through this checklist. It can be the adaptation plan itself, but it could also be a stakeholders involvement process report, or an analysis, or a sectorial impacts report, for any kind of information that deals with adaptation and you think that could be relevant to understand better the answers of each of the responses. This is an actual example that we have used to test, this was Copenhagen, that we used to test the tool. Yes, in comments, for example, imagine that you, this is metric 2, that deals with whether specific budgets have been assigned to each of the adaptation measures or policies that the plan includes. So it could be yes for some of them, so then the response would be yes, but in our comments we could say, well, only priority actions have been assigned with a budget, but not all of the actions have a budget, or any other kind of explanation that you think that could help us understand or know better each of the responses. Next, please. There could be some difficulties interpreting metrics. For example, is the creation of the plan funded with own resources? What does this mean? Well, the documents that we can share with you in which each metric is explained in detail has additional information, so no worries. But anyway, some questions or some doubts, interpretation doubts could arise. These are some of the examples that when we were testing the tool, we shared because we had different views of each of the metrics, and that's fine. This is why we included in the Excel file additional information and comments, so you can explain how you interpreted the metric in case you thought it wasn't clear enough. So for example, here, is the creation of the plan funded with own resources? You could think, why is this relevant? Where there is This study that assesses a number of plans, city plans in the United States, that has seen that implementation, the degree of implementation is greater when the plan has been funded with own resources. This, of course, has been, this study looks only at plans at the US. So this could be true for the US and not true for other cases. But anyway, we think it's interesting that we could track if this is the case or not. Yeah, so these are just some examples in the website, in the Excel file that we share with you. You will also see that there is a contact, Marta's or my contact. So any doubt that you could have while filling in the table, we are happy to help or to clarify or to discuss with any of you what could be mean or if relevant for each of the cases. So next, please. This is an example of the kind of results that we get. The different colors in this case represent different cities in which we have assessed adaptation plans preliminary. You can see that there are here the 17 indicators that I was talking about at the beginning, and we get a number of performance in each of the indicators. The idea of this is not just to have a ranking of those regions that are doing best or worse than others. Here, what we aimed is to visualize very easily which are the indicators that are weaker or that represents an opportunity when we are evaluating a plan. Maybe we need to do more regarding consistency. We need to do more with legislation and regulatory nature, while other indicators like funding in some cases or prioritization or public opinion are quite well represented. So this should be understood as a way to identify those areas that are strong, we are doing good, and those areas in which we could do better, or we could start working on those areas as well. That's just a way to visualize it quite easily. Next, please. So why do we think this could be interesting for the members of RegionsAdapt? Well, first, because as I was saying before, it can help you identify areas that has been in the literature that we have found that those are areas important for adaptation policies to be successful. It can also help us track adaptation policy processes. Are we making progress in which areas more than in which others, etc. And finally, because it can also provide a way of learning and sharing lessons between regions. So in the end, it's just a tool to help regions and other non-stakeholder actors progress towards successful adaptation. Next, please. This is the acknowledgements. The actual, this is a working paper that is available at BC3's website. We have already shared it with some of you at least, but it's, yeah, we can share it again if needed, in which we explain each of the metrics and why it has been considered to be relevant. So these documents are available and we can share them with you, and just some acknowledgements as this work has been developed within the RESIN European projects and MINECO project. I think this was the last slide, so happy to receive questions or comments. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Elisa. It was a very helpful presentation from you. Also, regarding this is the part of the commitments of the upcoming years of regions. However, I would like to highlight, as Elisa has done it as well, that this is not like a competition among the members, among the regions, but it is a cycle for those regions who are more advanced on climate adaptation actions. It is great, they can teach other regions, they can help, and also for those regions that are on starting points, it is okay because they will also learn, they will also have something to contribute, a good experience, a bad experience. The idea of RegionsAdapt is to share and to help each other and strengthen their capacities and share with our members, as I've said. So thank you very much to all the panelists here. Right now, we are going to proceed to show the link of the report is available on this link that you can check or at the handout section. And right now, if any one of you has any questions, we will be happy to give you some answers on that. I see Enrico has a question, so I'm going to.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Enrico Ponte, and I'm working from GeoAdapt as consulting group. And I would like to thank you for the great overview about the effort that you are developing in this year under the RegionsAdapt. I was very interesting about what you were presented, and I mean, for sure, I has different type of question, but I'm sure that looking the nice report, some of the question will be replied there. But I would like to ask you something about how your process can try to solve some of the limitation related to adaptation that during this webinar you have also pointed out, that are related, for example, to the fact that identifying specific adaptation action is particularly related to the area, to the specific area of where an action can be developed. So I'm wondering if in any part of this process that you have very well summarized, is there an evaluation about territorial complexity, territorial issue that are happening in a specific area? I'm talking about social, economic, political. So is there any part where there is a more comprehensive evaluation of component that can be contribute to a successful or not implementation of an adaptation process? Thank you.
Thank you. This is Elisa. Vanessa, should I intervene?
Sure,
Oh,
Elisa. Go.
Okay. With regards to the APC tool, there are a number of questions that involve multi-level governance, integration among institutions, how stakeholders and which stakeholders have been involved. So, of course, the questions have been designed to be answered yes or no, but these territorial complexities are within some of the questions. And then I think all the comments and all the suggestions could be filled in if thought not to be enough. I think we are also from our side, we are also learning. All the information that we get from you is just to be used for academic purposes, and we are also learning what is important from you, from policymakers, decision makers, and other stakeholders. So I think we are open for this checklist to evolve together with the information that we receive. In any case, so my question would be, yes, some complexity has been incorporated into the questions, and in a second response would be, if this is not considered to be enough, I think that the checklist could also have an evaluation process and could be improved.
Thank you, Elisa. And also, in addition to Elisa's response, as RegionsAdapt initiative, we do have the 7 key priority areas where you can also find social impacts and adaptation and economic impacts and opportunities and infrastructure and territorial planning, which on those areas the regions can report and can also share with us the evaluation that they have taken place in their own territories. So we have the questionnaire with questions regarding this specific subjects, and the ABC tool, and also the sharing with the working groups within RegionsAdapt initiative. So
I also would like to add something, if that's okay.
Sure.
So as part of the reporting platform for CDP, one of the questions that we do consider is to kind of identify or give the regional governments opportunity to report on compounding factors that may worsen the impacts of climate change within their jurisdiction. And that could incorporate different things, right? It could incorporate population increase. So that question kind of considers the complexity of the conditions that are happening within different regions. Of course, we are striving to improve how we do our analysis on this question, but I think moving forward, there's definitely scope to incorporate more specific questions on the complexity of different jurisdictions. And it is something that we in CDP, along with our work with RegionsAdapt and Energy First T, this is something that we want to kind of cover moving forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Carl. Also, I have another question that has been mentioned on the question section here. Alexander asks, does a listing of good actions is available? Does it show how regions develop their adaptation plans? Yes, it does. We do have this report that it's not only about what regions problems, but also the actions that they have taken. And also we have, as I mentioned, these working groups. You can contact me anytime regarding how the regions have been involved in these working groups and how they have approached certain issues and the solutions that they have taken regarding these issues. And there are a lot of good experiences that have been shared, and yeah, I can give you more information regarding this bilaterally if you can contact me. Anyone else like to ask anything? So Enrique has also mentioned about the has also mentioned about the scan tool. He asked me that he has a particular interest on this scan tool, which is a tool precisely that is an initiative from the GIFT Foundation, And right now we're working with the working group of infrastructure and territorial planning. And it is at the starting point. I will say the regions are still getting engaged in this tool, but I would be happy to share about how this tool works. Is more related to the environment, and yes, I think this would be a great opportunity for us to speak again with Enrico and to explain more about this tool and the technical partner that has supported us with this. Okay, great. I don't know if anyone else has any other question. Otherwise, I shall proceed to thank everyone here and all the panelists of CDP, the Basque Center for Climate Change, my colleagues, and thank you very much all for your attendance. Anyone else would like to say anything? Or you can find this report at our website. You can always contact me at RegionsAdapt at energy4sd.org. Kahinda? Oh yes, Kahinda, we have you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Hi, thanks. So my name is Kainde Balogun, and I'm with the MCII, so that's the Munich Climate Insurance Initiative here in Bonn, Germany. And we are currently in the process of trying to formalize the technical partnership with the RegionsAdapt. And so just quickly scanning through the report, I saw that the Basque Center for Climate Change are actually working in something similar to what we also offer some of the governments that we work with in our different projects. And I just thought it might be quite interesting to see also with the current existing technical partners of the initiative, how we could maybe also use our different tools or different methods to also combine and actually help the different regional governments that are facing their different risks. So I just thought it might be an interesting idea to also maybe really get to have a webinar, so to speak, and know all the technical partners and see synergies in moving forward in trying to maybe develop proposals together or with the proposals together with the different regional government and how to best help them using the current capacity that we have. It's just a little idea put forward. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It would be great. The RegionsAdapt initiative is an opportunity for all of us to cooperate. So I don't think the BC3 will have any problem on sharing also their knowledge, because it's an important part of their project to share and to cooperate with others. I don't know if Elisa would like to say something regarding this idea.
Hi, yes, thank you. I'm very interested in knowing more about your tools or your ideas. We can get in touch if you want, and we can explore opportunities to see if we can do something together that could fit within the RegionsAdapt interest. Yes, we are open to collaborations.
Okay, perfect. I'll just put my email address in the question chat below, so you can just shoot me a hi, and then we can see how we can just quickly coordinate that.
Great. I don't know if I can find it, but I will find you some way. So thank you.
Okay, wonderful. So I've seen a lot of people congratulating Energy4SD for this meeting. And I would also like to congratulate my colleagues, Joanne and Sarah, who's done this amazing job during 2017. And thank you all very much for your kind welcome of me into this new personal project that is RegionsAdapt for me. And I'm willing to help all of you. You can always contact me, and thank you very much for your attendance and your kind words. Thank you.